I married Daniel the moment I graduated from college. I was with him from a debt-ridden poor student to a well-known lawyer in the city. 2 years later, I gave birth to our son, Leo. Leo was a lot like Daniel, quiet and reserved, not particularly close to me either, until one morning, I accidentally broke both of their mugs. Daniel frowned impatiently. How can you not even do such a simple thing right? Leo stared at the mess on the floor, a rare look of regret on his face. But that was a gift from Miss Rose to me and Daddy. I suddenly felt tired. That night, I proposed a divorce. Daniel didn't even look up. Don't make a scene. I won't give you custody of the child. He seemed certain that I would compromise for Leo's sake. I nodded. Okay. I didn't want him anyway. Daniel's head snapped up, his face showing a hint of shock, but it quickly returned to its usual expressionless state. If you want a divorce, I won't hold you back. But are you sure you've thought this through? I moved my luggage to the car, glanced at Leo hiding behind the door, and said calmly, "You're a lawyer. The divorce agreement you wrote, even if I wanted to go back on it, I wouldn't have a chance, right? I don't want any of the joint property. Consider it my child support for Leo. I'm taking this car." Daniel suddenly grabbed my car door, his voice unsteady. "Summer, if you're divorcing me because I took Rose's case, there's no need." I pulled hard on the car door. It didn't budge. He took a deep breath, somewhat irritated. "I've said it before. I'm a lawyer with professional ethics. I have to be responsible for my case. So, until now, he still thought the problem was with me." I met his gaze and questioned, "Daniel, if you're really as righteous as you say you are, why did you wait until I found out to tell me? And why did you accuse me of snooping in your study after I found out?" I had just gone in to clean as usual and happened to see it. For all these years, the cases scattered on his desk were never a secret, but that time, he had flown into a rage, scolding me for not respecting him. Seeing him silent, I continued, "Ask yourself, Daniel, do you really not have any selfish motives?" He was stunned for a moment, then quickly recovered. "I wasn't feeling well that day. My attitude towards you was a bit off, but I apologized later." Apologized. That day, Daniel had yelled at me. My son, Leo, stood at the door, coldly watching everything in the study. "Mommy, you're not respecting Daddy's privacy. Miss Rose wouldn't do that." The next morning, before he left with Leo, he had left me with a single sentence: "I'll be back early tonight." That was his so-called apology, and the breakfast I had prepared for them sat untouched on the clean dining table. The father and son hadn't taken a single bite. I looked at his uncomprehending expression and couldn't help but sneer. "For the past 2 years, I've been the one to pick Leo up from school. You've never participated in a single parent-child activity, let alone any interest classes. Daniel, tell me, why are you so enthusiastic about picking him up every day now?" The courtyard was instantly silent. I had loved Daniel. Leo was once my everything, but people get tired, hearts can die. The great lawyer who was so eloquent in court was now unable to utter a single word of rebuttal. "Summer, these are just trivial matters." I closed my eyes, an indescribable weariness washing over me. Every single one is a trivial matter, but when the floor is covered in them, anyone would break down from picking them up. This bowl of half-cooked rice, I had swallowed it again and again. Finally, I was willing to spit it out. As the car slowly drove out of the gate, Leo didn't even say, "Mommy," and I didn't need to look back at him, even though I had endured countless shots to keep him, held him all night to soothe him to sleep, and even neglected my own postpartum depression. Daniel and I had been married for 8 years, and Leo had been born 6 years ago. I myself couldn't believe that our enviable family of 3 had come to this. It all started 6 months ago, with a divorce case Daniel had taken on. The client was his college sweetheart, Rose. Back then, Daniel was the handsome, upright, but poor top student in the law school, and Rose was the belle of the literature department who pursued him relentlessly. They walked hand in hand down the plane tree-lined avenue of the campus, living out a love story everyone in their youth would envy, and my deep-seated affection was a joke. Later, I heard that Rose's parents were unhappy with Daniel's background and had caused a scene at the law school. Perhaps beautiful things are not meant to last. They went their separate ways. At that time, to relieve my own sadness, I often played the piano in the music room. One day, I accidentally found Daniel sitting in the next classroom. He said he liked my piano playing. I was overjoyed. Even if he only liked my piano playing, life went on in an orderly fashion. I cherished every moment I had alone with him, but I never dared to show a hint of my feelings, afraid that he would avoid me if he knew. I liked him cautiously, my secret crush making me timid and weak. I had the courage to drink and talk with him, even to set him up with other girls so he could forget Rose sooner. I just didn't have the courage to tell him I liked him, until our senior year, when I was walking back from off campus alone and was cornered in an alley by a group of thugs. Daniel shielded me, the clubs landing on him mercilessly. When the school security guards found us, the blood had already soaked through his usual crisp white shirt. His strong arms held me tightly. Before he passed out, he told me, "Don't be afraid, I'll protect you." That night in the hospital was long. I whispered in his ear, carefully confessing my love for him. He accepted, we got together, and we got married, but I never expected that 8 years later, Rose would reappear in our lives, and even more unexpectedly, she became my son Leo's homeroom teacher. Daniel knew about this before I did. The first time Rose saw Leo, she immediately went to look at the student files. When Daniel received the call, the female voice on the other end choked out, "No wonder he looks so familiar. He's the son of an old friend." That's why Daniel had insisted on picking Leo up from school after he started. It wasn't out of guilt for his child. It was because he wanted to see that person every day. If Leo hadn't let it slip, I would never have known. I was worried every day that this father and son would be hungry without breakfast, that it was unhealthy to eat hamburgers all the time. It turned out they were rushing to another woman's house for breakfast every morning. Once upon a time, I had also dreamed of a family of 3, through all 4 seasons. But the present was no longer the future I had imagined. I got a new phone and bought a plane ticket to France this weekend. A painter I really admire is having an exhibition there. For the sake of this father and son, I hadn't traveled alone since we got married. A trip with the 3 of them was often even more exhausting for me. I was in charge of planning all the itineraries, and they were only in charge of complaining. "The schedule is so packed. Going out with you is more tiring than going to work. What's so great about a temple? You really believe in that Lovelock nonsense." I wanted to go to the botanical garden. Why didn't Mommy arrange that? Mommy won't let me eat anything. I hate Mommy the most. Looking back, the answers were all in the details. This trip, I spent nearly 2 months, traveling almost all over France. The evening breeze on the Seine, the poetry of the Tuileries, the gentle twilight on Montmartre, the brilliant history contained in the Louvre. At lively street corners, the sound of a violin was scattered by the wind, like a movie scene transitioning unhurriedly. Before, the mountains and seas were all them. Now, the mountains are mountains, and the seas are seas. When I returned to the hotel, I saw my own painting. Many people were gathered in front of it, praising it with the most romantic language. I looked at the vibrant, lively me in the mirror and suddenly detached myself from this failed marriage. I must be like a mountain. I must be like a mountain, full of fragrant grass and flowers, yet with extremely hard rocks. For myself, I will do my best, and I will respect what I cannot do. The moment the plane landed, my old phone was filled with missed calls and messages from Daniel. "Answer the phone. Summer, what are you playing at? If you come home and apologize now, I can still forgive you. Where did I put the gray tie I wore to the last court hearing? Leo has a fever. What medicine do you usually give him? Summer, what do you mean by not answering the phone? Even if we're divorced, Leo is still your son. You are still his mother in the eyes of the law. The doctor said Leo's cough has been hard to get rid of since he was a child. What method did you use? Summer, I'm going crazy. Where are you?" After returning home, I sent a message. 3. Peel water. I remember the first time I made this for Leo to drink. He was still very obedient then. 1 spoonful after another. His cough got better and better. The last time I made this for him, he had a sullen face and swatted the bowl out of my hand. Miss Rose said these are all folk remedies. Mommy, you're so stupid. The hot soup splashed on my hand. I just thought he was being a child. I brought out another bowl, enduring the pain, and comforted him. "Leo, you have to trust Mommy. You'll stop coughing after you drink this." But he refused, turned around, and ran back to his room. "I'm not drinking that garbage." I stared at his back, stunned. Leo's behavior was so much like Daniel's when he came home from a social event recently. When I brought him the hangover soup that I had reheated again and again, he coldly pushed my hand away. "I don't drink this." I scrolled up through the chat history. A dense patch of green. "It's Leo's first day of kindergarten. Do you have time to take him with me? I bought some fresh shrimp at the market today. Do you want to come home for dinner? Are you still in a meeting? I'll bring you something to eat." No matter how busy you are with work, you need to rest well. Remember to take the vitamins on the table. And Daniel, in the past 2 years, hadn't sent me as many messages as he had in these 2 months. Let alone messages he initiated. There were very few. The message had barely been sent for a minute when Daniel's call came through. His voice was a little hoarse. as if he hadn't slept well in a long time. Summer, you finally answered the phone. I have to work and take care of Leo now. You need to come back and be with him. I put down my paintbrush and tried to remain calm. Daniel, I'm busy too. We're divorced. If you need a nanny, you can hire another one. I have my own things to do. What else could you be busy with besides me and Leo? Don't tell me you're working. Daniel interrupted me impatiently. I suppressed my anger and said, word by word, what I'm busy with is my business. I don't need to report to you. And Daniel, you're a divorce lawyer. You know the meaning of the word, divorce, right? People get divorced because they can't stand each other. People get divorced because they don't want to see each other again. So stop bothering me. It's really annoying. I hung up the phone and directly blocked his number, but I never expected Daniel to be so persistent. He kept calling me from different numbers. When I occasionally answered, I would hear Leo's reluctant voice. Mommy, when are you coming back? I was in the middle of signing a contract and said casually, Daddy and Mommy are divorced. I won't be coming back. If you need anything, you can ask Daddy first. You're not coming back at all. Leo's voice was suddenly filled with surprise. Then can Miss Rose be my mommy? The phone was suddenly taken away, and Daniel's flustered voice came through. The child is still young and doesn't know what he's saying. Don't take it to heart. I was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, Daniel, when you named him Leo, was it a homonym for Rose? The other end of the phone was so quiet I could hear the shaky breathing. Summer, he said my name softly. Leo is our child. Do you have to keep harping on these things? I curled my lips, finding it inexplicably funny. Daniel, because the one who was forced to swallow the grievances was me, not you. Every time I took his clothes, smelled the scent of another woman on him, it was me who endured it. Every time I saw the occasional feminine product left in the passenger seat, it was me who endured it. Every time I heard the child I had carried for 10 months and given birth to complain about me because of someone else's instigation, it was still me who endured it. The mug I accidentally broke that day was a gift from Rose to them. A set of 3, the remaining one was on her desk. I don't believe Daniel didn't understand the meaning behind Rose's gift, so when both father and son attacked me at the same time, my tolerance lost all meaning. The voice on the other end of the phone paused for 3 seconds. Rose, her case is almost over. I curled my lips sarcastically. What? Do you want me to pop a bottle of champagne for her? Or send me a wedding invitation? The case was over. Other things were about to begin. Summer, how long are you going to keep this up? Daniel's tone was helpless, as if he were scolding me for being unreasonable. I hung up the phone without a second thought and blocked him again. This painting was just one finishing touch away. When Chloe came to see me, I was preparing dinner. She was my agent and my best friend. She came in with a bottle of champagne to celebrate my finally escaping my misery. Seriously, a genius painter like you, cooking for that scumbag. Even Honey would shake her head. The young painter, Summer dear, who had risen to fame years ago and then fallen into obscurity, was me. Summer dear. I lay on the sofa, propping up the pillow. Who's Honey? A female dog I just took in. I mean, no female animal in the world would agree. The air was silent. She cleared her throat and suddenly asked, are you still going to handle that little brat from the Daniel family's schooling? That private school isn't just about money. You promised to give the school 2 paintings. Leo was starting 1st grade in the fall. Daniel and I had spent a lot of effort on his education. Daniel had gotten to where he was today through education, so he valued Leo's schooling even more than the average parent. He had his eye on this private school early on. Daniel had tried to pull many strings but couldn't get a spot. I couldn't bear to see him worry about Leo while also being busy with work, so I had Chloe, under the pretext of donating paintings, find the school principal and propose Leo's admission. It was a great success. The principal excitedly shook Chloe's hand and promised that as long as he could get my paintings, not just 1 Leo, but 10 would be no problem. Leo's schooling was thus settled, but I didn't want Daniel to know about this, so I had the principal contact a teacher Daniel had previously asked for help. Because of this one spot, Daniel was praised to the skies in his law firm. Everyone who saw him praised him for his extensive network, and Leo became the envy of all the parents and students in his kindergarten. But now, what did you say back then? Chloe casually scrolled through her phone. I said I would do my best. A businesswoman is a businesswoman. She only said 8/10 of what she meant, but made people believe 12/10. Those 2 paintings. I sold them for you. Me. I donated all the auction proceeds to a Hope Primary School. Me. In short, I won't let you use them to pave the way for that pair of scoundrels from the Daniel family. Me. Leo was, after all, the child I had given birth to with half my life. I still cared about his future, but I didn't have any suitable paintings for the school now. Like all mothers, to take good care of that father and son, I was on call almost 247 at home. In the end, I didn't even have a chance to pick up a paintbrush. Fortunately, I could become myself again. At 4 in the morning, a shrill ringtone. It was an unknown number. I pressed the answer button and tried to stay awake. Hello, who is this? Sister. In-law. I'm Daniel's assistant. Daniel was drinking with a client until after 3. I was about to take him home, but he said his stomach hurts and he can't move. We're at the Central Hospital now. Sister. In-law. Can you come over? The assistant recited his lines stiffly, even stumbling a little in the middle, with no confidence at all. To be honest, there was a reason he was still an assistant after so many years. I resisted the urge to throw my phone and lowered my voice. As far as I know, Daniel's emergency contact is not me, right? What? It was about 6 months ago, I think. Daniel had a small car accident on his way to court. When I arrived at the hospital, a nurse took me to his room. Seeing my panicked expression, she kindly comforted me. Miss Rose, your husband is fine. He was unconscious when he was brought in, so we contacted you. My footsteps faltered, and I vaguely heard my own voice tremble. Where did you get my number? Daniel's phone should have a password. He didn't want to use a fingerprint or facial recognition, saying it wasn't safe. The nurse smiled, as if she was used to it. Of course, it was the emergency contact, a number that could be called without unlocking the phone. The first person to be contacted in case of danger. In Daniel's phone, it was Rose, and I was told by his colleague. That was the first time I felt a sense of disappointment towards Daniel. But how could a person who disappoints you only disappoint you once? I lay back in bed, listening to the rustling sound on the other end, even more certain that there was a second person listening beside him. You were able to find my number, which means even you know Daniel's phone password, but I don't, which is enough to show that I'm not worthy of his trust, so you should find someone else. Just as I was about to hang up, Daniel finally stopped pretending. He quickly snatched the phone, his voice a little aggrieved. Summer, I drank too much again. I'm not feeling well. I suddenly remembered the last hangover soup I had made for him before the divorce. He had said he didn't drink that anymore. And Leo, his cough has been on and off. I had the nanny make the 3-peel water, but Leo doesn't like it. Daniel, I couldn't suppress the anger in my heart and interrupted him. You're in the hospital, with a doctor next to you. Calling me is useless. It will only disturb my sleep. If your son doesn't like it, you should teach him to get used to it, because I won't be going back to make it for him. Do you understand? I don't care what you're thinking now, but I'm telling you, I did those things before because I was willing, not because I should have. Divorce was a well-thought-out decision. There is absolutely no possibility of going back. Do you understand, Daniel? The other end was dead silent. Just as I was about to hang up, Daniel was still not giving up. He lowered his voice, as if in disbelief, with a hint of dissatisfaction. Summer, can't you forgive me just this once? For the sake of our many years together. I laughed in anger, but I had calmed down a lot. Daniel, forgiving a person for making a mistake is not just forgiving once. It's forgiving you every single time I remember it. If Daniel had been generous and we had had an amicable separation, I would have respected his integrity. Unfortunately, he was clingy and feigned affection, and in the end, he still wanted to be a good person. The news of my divorce from Daniel gradually spread. Many of our mutual friends came to persuade me. Some said I had been with him until today, and now that we finally had everything, I was just giving it away to someone else. Others said Daniel still had feelings for me. Otherwise, why would he try so hard to win me back? Just then, I received a message from a stranger. It was a picture. In the dim light, the two people on the bed had their fingers intertwined, holding each other tightly. Even without the wedding ring I had spent so long picking out, I could recognize that pair of well-defined hands. And Rose's and Daniel's faces. Daniel was asleep. Rose was smiling. I casually posted the picture on my social media, with the caption, "See, the case is over, so you can sleep together openly now." I didn't block anyone from seeing this post. In less than 3 minutes, another text came from that unknown number. Summer, are you crazy? Delete it now. Delete it. You dared to send it, but you're afraid I'll share it. If anyone in the city hasn't seen this picture by tomorrow, it's my failure as an ex-wife. And Rose doesn't even have me as a friend, so how did she see my post? Daniel didn't contact me, which means Rose knows his password and went through his social media. I turned off my phone. Inspiration striking. I went to my studio in the countryside and stayed there for 3 whole months. One of my paintings was sold to a collector abroad for a 7-figure sum. 2 other sketches were taken by Chloe. They were still to be given to that school. I frowned slightly. What are you doing? She was leaning on the windowsill, her hands cupping her face. You're a widowed single mother, and I'm an unmarried single woman. Someone has to take care of us in our old age. I've sponsored a girl, so of course I have to give her the best education, and then have her take care of us. This one is definitely better than your biological son. Widowed. I couldn't even refute that. As for the 2 sketches, it didn't matter, compared to the painting. Some people care more about who the painter is, but I didn't know that the 3 months that passed in a flash for me were like years for Daniel and Rose. Everyone knew that Daniel had divorced his wife of 8 years for his first love, and people, not finding it dramatic enough, added fuel to the fire. They said Daniel had planned it all along, just waiting for Rose's divorce case to be resolved before abandoning his original wife. Even his own son was eagerly calling someone else Mom. It wasn't a drunken mistake as they had explained, but premeditated, and I, the long-suffering wife, became the only victim. Daniel's career was ruined. Any female client was unwilling to hire him, and male clients, due to pressure from the women and their families, were even more unwilling to get involved. There are thousands of lawyers. If one doesn't work out, we'll just switch. And Rose was even worse off. She even lost her job. No parent was willing to put their child in the hands of a divorced third party. Someone in the parent group chat openly clamored, "It doesn't matter if my child's grades are a little poor, but if his character is bad, I'll have nowhere to cry." Exactly. If my child were like that, I would find a box without a lid and stuff her in it. As a teacher, her character is corrupt. How can we be at ease with that? Fire her. Exactly. All kinds of raff are becoming teachers. We 90s parents just don't like to meddle. But we're not dead. I thought this would be the end of it. But Rose, of all things, shouldn't have thrown the dirty water back at me. She wrote her and Daniel's love story into a short essay and posted it on social media. She named me as the third party. She claimed I had created all sorts of misunderstandings while she was abroad, causing her and Daniel to break up, and that I had then become Mrs. Holt. The rumor spread like wildfire, and some extreme netizens had already started digging up my private information. Even Chloe called to remind me that if my identity was exposed, the consequences could be serious. Summer, it's okay if you're the third party, but, Summer dear can't be. I had always been curious. The Rose family valued elite education and had gritted their teeth to send Rose abroad for further studies. How could they be willing to let her be a kindergarten teacher? Now I knew. There are many Adas in this world who cannot be helped up. I gave Daniel a chance to clarify this matter. He said, "Summer, I can't be without my career, and Leo can't have a notorious father, so Leo can have a notorious mother." Oh, I almost forgot. He had already chosen to have another mother, so I had to take the blame for being the third party, and I probably had already guessed his answer, so I wasn't too surprised. I just sighed softly, sighed for my misplaced love, sighed for the impermanence of the world. Chloe threw a pile of photos at me and stared at me for a long time. "What are you crying about?" "Crying." I raised my hand and touched my cheek. It was wet. "Probably because I feel sorry for my old self." Chloe stroked my head. "Don't argue with them. Can't you just sit down and slap each other a couple of times? Here, this is a weapon from your sister." She sent me a pile of photos of Daniel and Rose eating and living together before we were divorced, and a 57-page PDF file containing a timeline of my and Daniel's relationship, from when we started dating to when we got married. It was supplemented with interviews from all our classmates and friends, which accurately refuted Rose's short essay. That afternoon, the top trending topics were shuffled again. Adults like to compromise for the so-called bigger picture. They bring it on themselves. When you were naming the child I risked my life to give birth to, were you thinking of your first love or me in the rescue room? Scumbag and bitch, go to hell. I dare to curse the world. I dare to curse God. I destroy Buddha and slander my ancestors. I look down on the world, but I just don't dare to slap the scumbag to death. The more broken the car, the more spare tires. What the hell is finding your first love? Which law firm? Which kindergarten? You don't say these crucial things. How am I supposed to avoid them? How easy is it to destroy a person's efforts? Experts work for a year to increase the marriage and birth rates, and all it takes is one story of an affair. Wishing sister a beautiful life on her own, living a passionate life again. The next time I saw Daniel was at the entrance of that private elementary school. He looked very scruffy, with unshaven stubble and bloodshot eyes. Even his shirt was wrinkled. Chloe had a fever, so she asked me to take the little girl she sponsored to school. Leo stared at the little girl I was holding, his eyes full of hostility. Daddy, why is mommy holding her? Didn't you say mommy would only ever be my mommy? She's the poorest kid in the class. She doesn't even have a mommy and daddy. Didn't Auntie Rose say that only little princesses and little princes can go to this school? Why is she here too? Daniel didn't speak, just looked at me. I squatted down and straightened Chloe's clothes. Chloe, you go to class first. I'll come and pick you up tonight. Before I could finish, a few figures rushed out of the school gate. Miss Summer, I finally get to see you. It was the principal. They had been waiting at the gate since they heard I was coming today. Daniel seemed to have suddenly thought of something. His eyes filled with disbelief. The painter they were talking about was you. Leo is still waiting for a spot here because you suddenly went back on your word. I shrugged and denied it. I didn't go back on my word. I just changed the person. It was now the classmate Leo looked down on the most. Mommy, I don't even have a school to go to. Why are you helping someone else instead of me? You have to tell them to let me in. And I'll still acknowledge you as my mommy. I looked at Leo quietly. He was looking more and more like Daniel. Even his temper was the same. He took me for granted, coming and going as he pleased. He was glaring at me, his eyes a naked threat. I took Chloe's hand and said with a blank expression, "You don't have to acknowledge me." Daniel's face changed dramatically, and he blocked my way. He's just a child. How can you say that to him? I laughed. A child. A 6-year-old child who, in order to go out with his father and his favorite teacher, put sleeping pills in his own mother's milk. If he hadn't mistaken them for effervescent tablets, I would never have found out. At that time, he had said righteously, "I want Auntie Rose and Daddy to go out with me. I don't want Mommy to come." I slapped him hard across the face. It was the first time I had ever hit him, and it hurt more than if I had hit myself. From then on, he completely distanced himself from me. Occasionally, I would hear laughter coming from his room. It was always him on the phone with his Miss Rose. More than once, when I brought him milk, I heard him wishing to the Santa Claus I had given him, "Let Miss Rose be my mommy. I hate my current mommy so much." Now his wish had come true, and it was my fault. The principal looked at me awkwardly. "If this is your child, then we can also." No need. I led Chloe into the school, not forgetting to remind the security guard, "Don't let any unauthorized people in." Behind me, only the sound of Leo's wailing remained, but I thought, I can't care anymore. Life moved on in an orderly fashion. Now my life is more focused on painting. I often go out for a walk or travel to find inspiration. The vastness of 9.6 million square kilometers. The surge of 3 million square kilometers. It is the world of the four seasons. A magnificent chapter played by ice and fire. I followed the explorers over mountains and ridges, getting closer to the depths of the forest, riding the wind and waves. I chased the starlight into the deep blue. I once again entered the world of mortals, until I saw this poetic land clearly. I thought that the mountains and seas were insurmountable, that the stars were unreachable, but I never thought that the sea has a boat to cross, and the mountains have a path to follow. The mountains and seas can all be leveled, but it is difficult to level the human heart. Now that the rest of my life is peaceful, the past is over, the Daniel family can no longer affect me. Chloe wanted to hold an exhibition for me, saying it was a way to give back to the fans who had waited for me for so many years. I agreed. Daniel and Leo came. They stood in the crowded crowd, Leo holding a small cake in his hand. Afraid of being bumped, he carefully held the box. When he was still a few steps away from me, Leo shouted at me, his voice a little naive and romantic, "Mommy, this is a cake I made myself. Daddy and I came to celebrate with you." I acted as if I hadn't heard and walked onto the stage with Chloe. In this exhibition, there was a small area displaying Chloe's paintings. The brushstrokes were young and immature, but very interesting. A child's wild imagination is the most precious thing. I praised her creativity and affirmed her talent and hard work. Daniel's lips were pressed into a straight line, his face filled with an emotion I couldn't understand, and Leo, with red eyes, glared at the person on the stage and had already burst into tears. When I passed by the Daniel family, my hand was firmly held by Leo. Leo cried and accused me, feeling extremely wronged. "Mommy, I'm clearly your child. Why didn't you let me on stage? Why didn't you teach me how to paint? Why didn't you praise me?" I used some force, trying to pull my hand back. Daniel was a little anxious and helped Leo hold my arm. "Don't be like this. Leo is your biological son. He needs your comfort right now." My biological son. Even if he is my biological son, it doesn't stop him from being an ungrateful wolf. I was once willing to sacrifice everything for this child. My career, my freedom, even myself. The first time he learned to call me Mommy, I shed tears. Every time he was bumped or bruised, I was heartbroken. Even if he wanted the stars in the sky, I wished I could grow wings. But parents love their children, and they plan for their future. I set many rules for him, hoping he would develop good habits. Children are inevitably naughty, but Leo would still take my words to heart, until Rose appeared in his life, until he hoped that Rose could replace my role. He completely changed. On a hot summer day, the sanitation worker on the side of the road was sweating profusely. Leo casually threw a bottle on the side of the road, as if he hadn't seen the trash can a few meters away. I put on a stern face and asked him to pick up the bottle. I'm not picking it up. Those beggars will fight over it anyway. Who said they are beggars? They are people who live by their own hands, just like us. Leo pushed me away fiercely, his mouth full of impatience. No, they're not. Miss Rose said that as long as Daddy is rich, I'm different from other children. Mommy is always so shabby. I don't want you to be my mommy. At this moment, I knew that I had raised him for 6 years and disciplined him for 6 years, but it was no match for Rose's 6 months of indulgence. I glanced at them coldly. Sorry, I don't have time. If you don't let go, I'll call the police. They were kicked out of the exhibition hall. It suddenly started to rain outside. Leo took off his own coat and covered the cake box in his hands. He would occasionally look up at me with a wronged expression. I walked past without a glance, a faint smile still on my face. Daniel took 2 steps forward, wanting to call out to me, but he opened his mouth, his lips trembling, and couldn't say a word. When Daniel was pushed down the stairs by Rose and sent to the hospital, I had just returned to the country. My phone was full of missed calls from Daniel's father. He was a very simple farmer. When we got married, he had given me almost all of his savings. At that time, he had handed me the money in a cloth bag with trembling hands. I don't really have anything to give you. I just hope my son will be good to you. Out of a strange sense of apology to him, I went to the hospital. Just as he disliked me, Leo also disliked his grandfather very much. Now he could only cling to the old man's leg, sobbing uncontrollably. When he saw me, he cried even harder. I went to the doctor to understand the general situation. Daniel's injuries were not serious, but he seemed to be not at all cooperative with the doctor's treatment. When I walked into the hospital room, I saw a flash of light in Daniel's eyes. He said with certainty, "Summer, I knew you wouldn't leave me alone." I frowned slightly and suppressed the impatience in my heart. "Daniel, do you think you're being very affectionate right now?" Daniel was stunned, looking at me with a sincere expression. "No, Summer, I really am just unwilling to let go of Rose. That day was your birthday. I had decorated the house to give you a surprise, but I didn't expect Rose to come. We had an argument." I sneered and looked at him sarcastically. I haven't had a birthday in 6 years. Ever since I had a child, I had become the most insignificant person in this family. What was a birthday? "Daniel, you don't like me. You just think it's a pity to lose me." The person on the bed trembled violently and almost subconsciously lowered his eyes. I didn't pay any attention to him and continued to expose his thoughts. "You like strawberries, so you will buy them without hesitation. You don't like bananas that much, but you will still buy them because they are good for digestion. Liking is liking. There is no weighing of pros and cons." At first, he was just not used to being without my meticulous care. Later, he found that I might be more capable than Rose. Or maybe, that so-called unwillingness in his heart was satisfied the moment Rose agreed to him. Daniel was like a person picking up shells on the beach. When he found one he thought was better, he would throw away the one he was holding without hesitation. When he realized that the one in his hand was not as good as the previous one, he wanted to pick it back up again. But we are people, not shells. In the end, you still care about Rose. I've already said I don't like her. Can we just let this matter go? Why do you keep bringing up old scores? Oh, he asked me why I keep bringing up old scores. I looked at him quietly and said, word by word, "That's because this problem has never been properly resolved. You let me be generous with your selfish motives and pretended to be confused to brush off my grievances. Daniel, you don't have to have me. You're just trying to disgust me because you think I'll be soft-hearted and waver." Daniel tried to pull me, but because of the pain from his wound, he fell off the bed in a mess. This was the second time I had seen him cry. The first time was the day he broke up with Rose. At that time, I had held a heart and helped him mend it, afraid that he would not be able to get over it. Now that I saw him cry again, I felt no waves at all. He cried and begged me, "Summer, give me another chance. We have a child. We have a happy and complete family. Don't give up on me and the child so easily." "Okay, no, not at all. Save some dignity for yourself." Daniel, behind me, There was a sound of painful crying and the sound of hitting the ground. I resolutely closed the door, and I would never look back. Sending an umbrella after the rain has stopped is a burden to me. The next time I heard about Daniel, he had already taken Leo back to his hometown. I heard that Leo had changed his name. He was now called Daniel Jr., but no matter what he was called, it had nothing to do with me. I would pay child support to Daniel every month. I didn't miss a single one of my obligations. I just wouldn't love him like I used to. Daniel would often show me Leo's grades. He was always first in his class. One day, I received a call from Leo. He said, "Mommy, if I get a lot of first places, will you come back?" 5-year. Old Lily was putting her outgrown clothes into a bag, ready to give them to people in need. I reminded her, "Honey, can you wait for Mommy to help you pack?" There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone, and Daniel's hesitant voice followed, "Summer, are you married again?" Only then did I remember that the call was not over. "Yes, the child is already 5 years old. Do you have anything else?" The phone was suddenly hung up. I knew that this father and son would never pester me again. Lily was Chloe's child and had acknowledged me as her godmother, but I didn't want to explain too much. From then on, the mountain bird and the fish have different paths. From now on, the mountains and waters will not meet again. A little while later, Chloe came back with the materials for my graduate studies abroad. She had red eyes and pushed me angrily. "You're at this age and you're still going abroad to study. Isn't it good to help me take care of my child?" I smiled and hugged her. "This is my favorite teacher, and it's been 10 years. This is the first time he's accepting graduate students. You should congratulate me. If it weren't for Chloe's company all these years, my days would have been extremely difficult." Her favoritism added several layers of filters to me, turning a knot. "So, good me into a pretty good me. Alright. Congratulations to our teacher Summer for not being a rigid fragment, but for freely galloping between heaven and earth." "Okay," I nodded vigorously. "The road ahead will surely be filled with blooming flowers. I will finally stand on the steep mountain peaks, and when the spring comes and the rain stops,